can truly make the world a better and safer place. They should be doing everything that's dull, dirty, and dangerous. I dream of a world where you work because you want to, rather than you have to.
Helen Greiner is the co-founder of iRobot, a global consumer robot company that has sold more than 50 million robots worldwide. She previously founded Sci-Fi Works, a pioneer in the drone industry, advised the U.S. Army on autonomous systems and AI, and is a member of the Women in Technology Hall of Fame.
In 5 to 10 years, we will have multiple robots that interact with us. What's your perspective on how you see those robots?
They will be like your minions or your assistants, help you get more done. I see them as ways that you can concentrate on the things you like to do. Don't just think of the technology. Think of
Welcome, Helen. You co-founded iRobot in the 1990s when robots at home were not mainstream at all. What prompted you to pursue a career in robotics?
Well, I saw Star Wars when I was, I think, 10 years old on the big screen, and I fell in love. And it wasn't Han Solo or Luke Skywalker. It was R2-D2, and he's been my muse ever since. He had a personality. He was bold, daring, one of the main characters. And, I really liked him because he was more than a machine. And since then, I've really wanted to build things that were machines, sure, but more than machines.
And what were the biggest challenges that you were facing in the beginning? Because I would imagine it was hard to convince customers or investors that robotics is the next big thing.
Well, for the first 10 years, we basically did any robot for money, but always robots, and we always thought they were going to be big. So, we had robots that went down into oil wells. We had robots that for large-scale cleaning. We had robots that were in museums. There were so many different kinds of robots, and, we kind of always thought that'd be the next big thing. But it was really difficult. We didn't go after venture capital for the first 8 years, and we wouldn't have succeeded because there was a little bit of a robot bust in the 80s, and we were doing this in the 90s. So I got feedback from venture capitalists like I gave at the office and I would do this, but my partners would kill me. and But we found some forward-looking venture capitalists, and they came in, they stuck with us. And when we changed paths, we pivoted to the Roomba and the military robots. They were all on board. And that was really, really wonderful because, some of them had invested for the industrial side of the business.
You already mentioned that robotics is such a broad space, ranging from industrial robots to military robots to drones to robots at home. Where do you think are going to be the major fields of application in the decade ahead?
Oh, I think it's all of them. I mean, you can't really pick, right? Robots are like computers, right? It's not, there's one kind of computer. There's computers in every field for every kind of application. And robotics are the same way. So just because you think home robots are going to be big doesn't mean they're not going to be used in industry, and doesn't mean they're not going to be used for the military. When we used to brainstorm, we would fill the walls with Post-it notes of different robot ideas, autonomous cars, factory automation and all these things. And we really had to pick and choose which ones do we think we could pull off, and which ones do we think that we're going to get regulatory approval on. That's actually what killed autonomous cars for us, because we were doing this in the 90s, and we didn't think they would ever, let us drive on the roads or give us insurance and things like that.
And at iRobot, you basically focus on robots at home, right? For cleaning, vacuum, applications like that?
Actually, for the first 10 years, we did, as I said, any robot for money. And we started doing the Roomba. We put it on the market, and it was getting that traction. But at the same time, we got our robots deployed in Afghanistan, going out and doing bomb disposal, IED missions. And so that was going very successful. And we would get orders for like $100 million at a time from the U.S. military. So they really struck at the same time. So it wasn't like we were just consumer or just military. We were really doing both at the same time. After I left iRobot, they did sell off the military, but it's still going extremely strong as part of another company.
And when we double click on the home applications for a second. Where do you think we will see robots in our lives in the next 5 years?
Well, we already see them in our lives, right? We see them in home robots, and not as many as I thought there would be. I'm gonna have to say it's going to take more like 10 years to get there, because the next generation of robots have to do more than the ones we put on the market in 2002, right? They have to do manipulation. They have to pick up objects. They have to have much more recognition, and the technologies are getting there. In fact, I think the technologies are now leading the applications. You see all these wonderful humanoid robots, but nobody's really designing the applications for them in the way they need to have consumers take out their wallet and say, yes, I need that in my home.
Mhm. And what kind of applications do you see becoming the main use cases?
For humanoids,
Or for robots in general? Where do you?
well, I think they should be doing everything that's dull, dirty, and dangerous, right? Like the Roomba took on the dull and the dirty, but the dangerous applications like the military robots, agriculture, getting robots. There's already robots in the fields that have been for decades, but they get more and more autonomous, more and more capabilities, more and more jobs you can do with them. Wonderful application, because we can use less pesticides, use less herbicides, because if a robot does the weeding, you don't necessarily need to spray glycophosphates all over, and that gets into our food system and our water. Transportation, you've seen the autonomous cars. It's almost fulfillment centers, automation, and there's just almost not a field I can think of where we couldn't use robot technology as it becomes more and more capable.
But you would say it's more in processes that we may not see as consumers rather than in our homes
No, I
first.
think it'll come to the homes too. People spend a lot of time folding laundry, emptying and stacking the dishwasher day in and day out, right? Picking up, tidying up. I mean, I can imagine a home that, gets tidied itself. Um, and a lot of people would love to imagine that, especially when they have small children running around messing it up as soon as you tidy it up.
It's very true. And it seems at the moment that we are moving towards a convergence where we have generative AI on the one hand that is developing quite quickly, and we have robotics that are developing as quick. Do
I
you?
think not as quick,
Okay.
actually. Not as quick. I think it's AI you can do on a computer, press Control C and copy it. For
Mhm.
robotics, we always have the issues of getting into manufacture, supply chain, all the revs you need. If one thing changes, you have to go back and change everything, right? It's really much more integrated in a way.
But where do you see those two technologies converge? Do you think that generative AI is going to make robots more adaptable?
Absolutely. The generative AI is one aspect where you can make better training environments. You can have them be more adaptable, learn what's in their environment. But the breakthrough that really came from robotics is the recognition and the computer vision, being able to recognize what an object is quickly and easily. And that came really, really quickly.
Hmm. So you already touched upon humanoid robots, that some say is the next big leap in the technology. Where would you say the technology is right now when it comes to humanoid robots, and which breakthroughs are still needed to realize their full potential?
Well, I think that the applications are really lagging behind the technology. The wonderful demonstrations, great acrobatics, great dancing, but actually doing something useful that a person will take out their wallets and buy, that's really lagging behind. When I think about the applications, you know, folding laundry, a very hard application, right? Because the softness and the flexibility of material. When I think about what applications will come first, I really think it's going to take something where, the humanoid might not have the speed of a purpose driven device. It might not have and it might cost, quite a lot more. So you really want to look for an application where you've got the time to do it, and the cost is commensurate with the application. So when I think about it, I think maybe office cleaning, right? The humanoid can work all evening, all night actually in the office, and when you get back, there's a clean office every morning. Oh, and that same humanoid can run tasks around the office in the day. A lot of people are targeting manufacturing, fulfillment centers, and more power to them. But I know that some of these applications really need the speed, and that'll come over time. But I think that the first generation will probably act a little slower as they're processing the information.
When we look at this particular application that you mentioned, the office cleaning, when will we see robots cleaning in office? What's the time
A
frame?
lot of people bought Roombas to clean their office at night, so we already see it, but you want them to also do the tidying, empty the trash, wash the tables, all the other things that a human worker would do,
Mhm,
clean the bathrooms.
mhm.
um, so I think the humanoid form would give the flexibility to do all those jobs, but the actual programming on the task level, I think, is really lagging behind.
So the hardware is already there, if I understand you correctly, but the software is basically the problem right now.
I think so, yes.
Yeah. And what's the time frame that you see, especially when we also consider now you said AI is progressing so quickly? Do
Oh,
you
I think
think,
tasks like that is about 10 years. There's a study of how long it takes to go from research to product, and the answer was 13 years. So maybe I'm guessing we're 3 years in.
okay, so it's still a long time
It's
for,
early days, yes.
its early days. Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that because at the moment it seems that the technology is very hyped. Yeah, so all over the media, you see a lot of reports about humanoid robots. Many of the tech companies say, it's basically the next cars. In China, you have these competitions for humanoid robots that are already happening. But these are isolated cases that will not really be use cases that could be viable for either consumers or for industrial purposes, is what you're saying, in the next 10 years.
I mean, I haven't seen it yet. Maybe you come back to me in 5 years and see if there's humanoid robots skipping around the factory floors, or
Mhm.
whether they go into these more applications where you have time, where the value is there, and people are able to, pay for the, having a humanoid around, which will be quite expensive.
Mhm.
I mean, tens of thousands of dollars rather than thousands of dollars.
Okay. And you already touched upon this briefly. I mean, we already have many robots, for example, in factories, cooker robots, for example, and many others that are already existing. Which are the fields in which you would say humanoid robots will now bring an additional value contribution? Where would you typically be able to use these humanoid robots where other forms of robots could not be used?
Well, I just gave you one, maybe cleaning up the office after, or the
Yes.
store, or any other facility after hours, so you have all night to do it. As they get more rapid, maybe picking fruit, that's a job that it's very hard to hire people to do. Um, but you have to keep in mind that a lot of fruit is picked by shaking the tree, right? You don't want to get you don't want to design for something that there's another way to do it much, much easier with a purpose-built robot. But there are some applications in agriculture where you have to be very flexible, and really have to have a lot of manipulation ability.
Mhm. And many people, including Elon Musk, for example, make predictions that by 2040 we will have a billion humanoid robots. Do you think this is a likely scenario?
I doubt it, but I hope I'm wrong, right? I'm a robot advocate. I want there to be a lot of robots out there, but that's 15 years, and I think there's some robots in testing, in demos, and I think some are claiming it's the first product sales, but I don't see them out there in the large enough scale to get a billion by 15 years from now. But that doesn't mean I don't think the technology is really cool, and I'm glad there's a little bit of a hype around it, because it's pushing the technology forward much faster than if people were, doing it, just for the applications that exist today.
Yes, I agree. But when we imagine this scenario of the 1 billion robots, humanoid robots in 2040, what would our lives look like?
Well, I think it'll be great because you could spend time doing the things you want. I dream of a world where you work because you want to rather than you have to. And I think a lot of people would still work because the goal is to have an impact on the world and to make the future better. And I think robots are essential to help that.
Yeah. So, but the way that we would work would change probably, right?
Yes, yes, they will be like your minions or your assistants being able to help you get more done.
Mhm. So it would be a world in which everybody would have 3, 4 robots that would work for them. Is that what you would envision, or?
I think you can have one around the house, right? That does all
Mhm,
the chores. You can have one at the workplace helping you do anything that you don't have time or don't want to do, or that the robot's capable of doing. So you can spend your time doing the things that humans are very good at doing. Thinking about what's the next thing is one of those.
mhm. And you spend so much time thinking about robotics and being active in the field. What would you say is the most exciting application of robotics that you are seeing right now that may be a little bit under the radar for most other people?
Well, I think it's drone delivery, right? You want your food piping hot. You want it to come straight to you. You want that coffee in the morning, right? Drones can do that, and they're doing it in Ireland with Manna, and people accept it. And we've really, in this country, in the United States, we've really had a regulatory issue. When I first started building drones, after iRobot, I started a drone company, and it was absolutely illegal to fly drones. And there was a person at the FAA, regulatory authority for the aerospace in the United States. They had a person who would come and shut you down if you flew a drone, even if you're on your own property, you weren't going very high, you were, doing it very safely. There was no process in place where you could fly. And it's been very, very slow. That was 2008. It's 2025. And now you can fly some in the United States, but you can't really do drone delivery yet. I think it'll come, but it's taken too long in this country to create a way to prove that you're safe. I think you should have to prove that you're safe, and I think you should be safe, but there was no way to even cross those hurdles, and it's taken too long to get there.
And, what would the scenario look like if we had these drone deliveries at scale, for example? So basically, you would be able to deliver everything to your home, all weights, all. You could, for example, instead of going to Walmart once a week, you could have those things
Yeah.
delivered to you,
I think
or.
maybe one day, but I think it'll start out. Look, having a truck go around and stop at most of the houses is a very efficient, cost-effective way to deliver things. But if you want something in a hurry, if you want something piping hot, if you want, something that you need for dinner that night, it's much more effective to have a drone come and deliver it.
Mhm. And what would be your time frame for this? When will we see this
Well,
in
it's
the
already
US?
it's already happening in Europe. It's a regulatory issue in the United States.
Okay. So, that is also a very good leeway to my next question. When you look at all the different countries around the world, the technology is adapted in a very different way, um, largely driven by regulatory environments that you were highlighting. So, which countries do you think are in a way positioned to lead this robotics transformation in the future, and why?
So I think the 800-pound gorilla could be China because they have the manufacturing ability. They've got the supply chain set up to build physical equipment, and they also have the government support, meaning that you can change the regulations to support getting the new technology into products. Another one is Switzerland because of the wonderful work going on at the universities in robotics and artificial intelligence there.
Mhm. And if you had 5 minutes to speak to world leaders, what would be some of the things that you would tell them about robotics and how the technology will impact security and our societies?
Mhm. Well, I would tell them that um, Robotics is a very powerful technology, and it can be used like any other technology for good or bad. But if you want to think of the good it can do, from a security standpoint, instead of carpet bombing, you can have a more precise go after just the people that are doing bad things with robotics. In agriculture, you can use less pesticides and herbicides because the robots can um, kill weeds by laser, for example. Other fields like transportation, we have 50,000 car deaths a year in the United States. We can virtually eliminate those with autonomous driving,
Hmm.
or just having more sensors on the car so they can't smash into a pedestrian or a cyclist. You can go through the applications, and robotics can truly make the world a better and safer place. Yet it can be misused, and I think the trick is to um, make laws that enable the technology to get pushed into applications, but also keep people safe.
And you said you work basically in robotics in many different fields, from home robots to defense. Is there like a favorite story from this journey that you have that you would like to share?
One is that I was speaking at the Army War College, about the robots, and I was sandwiched between two generals, 3 stars on my right and 4 stars on my left. And afterwards, the audience was promotable colonels, the people that are going to be the next generals. And, I assumed all of them would want to speak to the rock stars on my right and left. But afterwards, so many of them came up to me. One of them shook my hand and said, gave me his coin, which is good on you in the military, and said that robot saved a whole squad of men on one mission, and because it went up to a bomb first. Likewise, once a general told me that he wanted to go through a street in Fallujah, and there was a car in the way. He asked a squad of men to go out and move it, but they didn't say no, because you don't say that to a general. But they probably said, "Hey, sir, how about a robot?" They took a robot up to the car, and the car blew up. And that general said that that robot saved the whole team. And we got countless stories of people naming their robots in the military. Scooby-Doo was one of the names, and they credited that robot with saving a bunch of lives. So I'm really proud of the work we're doing for the military, because it meant that hundreds of soldiers and thousands of civilians weren't blown up by bombs. So moving to the consumer side, I think one of my favorite stories is that once it was Saturday night, it's 11:30. I'm probably already in bed, or at least going to bed, and I start getting all these texts and a phone call, and it's like, what's going on? It's Saturday night. What do the robots do now? And it turns out Saturday Night Live had done a sketch about the Roomba, um, and they wouldn't tell me what it was about, because it kind of combined feminine hygiene with robotics. So, I eventually saw it, and, it really struck me that night that Roomba had become a cultural icon, because they weren't explaining what a Roomba was. They were just assuming people know what Roomba was and what it does, and they were making fun of it, which was just wonderful.
Mhm. So we talked about potential applications of those robots in 5 to 10 years, and that potentially we will have multiple robots that interact with us. Um, what's your perspective on how you see those robots? Do you see them as tools? Do you see them as partners? Do you see them as something in between?
I see them as minions that work for us, assistants that work for us. I see them as ways that you can concentrate on the things you like to do, the part of the chores around the house or the job that you like to do, and the robots can take care of the rest.
Maybe two more personal questions to you. I mean, you've done so many things in your career so far. How do you personally decide which projects or which companies you give your energy to?
Well, right now, I like to really focus on things that are scalable. Robotics is really hard. So if you make a robot for a small application, you're probably not going to succeed because of all the work that goes into designing it, getting it into manufacture, keeping the supply chain up, all the things that change over time. If someone changes a chip or a specification, all the things that can go wrong, it really needs a larger application that you need to address. So I really like to concentrate on things that are more scalable. And, I think that there are a lot out there with either drone delivery, agricultural robots, robots for security applications. I really think that the time is really now because the technology is getting more and more advanced.
And what advice would you give to young graduates starting out in the world of robotics today?
It's a wonderful time to do it. There's been a lot of training going on for people in robotics with the robot competitions, like the first competition. I would say think of the application. Don't just think of the technology. Really take the technology that's coming out that maybe people haven't thought of the application for and really focus on a need that's out there, that's a large need, that if you succeed, there's a large addressable market. And I think if I had a research bent, I might be thinking about bio-robots, robots that combine biology with robotics.
So could you maybe double click on that a little bit? Because it sounds super fascinating. What would that look like?
Well, I don't think people know exactly what it looks like yet, but there's a lot of work that's gone on with, editing genes, making small, creatures that can do things from the ground up. And I did say if you have a research bent, I'm not suggesting if you want to go start a company and, get venture capital funding, but, I think if you've got a research bent and you want to really build more capable systems of the future, I think that's one space that is still very, very wide open.
Mhm. And we like to end the show on a positive note. So we ask all guests the same question, which is what makes you optimistic about the future?
I'm optimistic about so much right now. There's so much going on in space exploration, in electrification of everything, in robotics being able to do all the wonderful things I've been speaking about. Um, Save lives, get rid of the dull, dirty, and dangerous jobs. I would say I'm optimistic because just like we live like royalty of the past, I think in the future we'll even better because all the things you don't necessarily like to take on and do, the robots and the artificial intelligence will be able to do for us.
Helen, thank you for joining us on What's Next and for showing us basically the future of robotics and how this technology will not only transform industries, but how we live and how we interact with technology. Thank you so much.
Well, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
And to our listeners, stay curious and join us next time for What's Next.